Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Fleming, and this is the Daily Fix podcast, the Fantasy and Frames only DFS podcast. With me, as always, my co-host, my brother from another mother, Joseph the Brain Matz. What's going on?
I'm just basking in the rare U of A win for football. So Arizona.
We'll see you in the national title game, buddy.
If people don't remember, we had the longest losing streak in the country for most of last season. So starting out 1-0 is very exciting, as opposed to, for you, Georgia starting 1-0 is a par for the course, even against a ranked team.
There's been heartache, Joe, though. I know last year was great, but I can tell you I've got many scars from being a Bulldog fan in my lifetime. So the Daily Fix podcast, we are the new show to Fantasy and Frames. We're really honored to be here for those that have listened to us before we came to Fantasy and Frames. What we're going to do each week is we're going to give a expensive tier option for DFS, a median tier option, and a bargain tier option, basically trying to help you fill out your lineup. We try to give you options. Obviously, we know that if you're listening to this, you take time to do research, and we're not telling you these picks are always going to be the best picks in the world, but I can promise you we will always put a lot of thought and research into them. And we've had a pretty good track record over the years. At the beginning of each podcast, I want to get to know me and Joe a little bit. And with, fantasy football drafts just ending, fantasy season starting, Joe, who is the guys that you own the most on your rosters?
So my 4 leagues, I actually ended up not getting anyone on my teams more than twice. But
didn't you tell me you had like 10 guys that you have on 2 teams?
Yeah, there's a bunch. So I'll pare it down.
A little bit. Appreciate that.
But the highlight for me, and the key part is that 2 of these leagues are keeper leagues, is I have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I have each of them on 2 of my teams. Nice. One of the teams I have both. So that's always fun because more often than not, at least one of those guys is going to go off. So that's a lot of fun for me.
Was it like 70% of Burrow's passes are to wide receivers?
Yeah, exactly. Which last year I also had a lot of Burrow. Sadly, this year he actually maybe should.
A little bit more expensive, huh?
Yeah, a list of guys that I wish I still had. Although I did all right at QB. But yeah, I got them. I got Rashad Bateman, a guy I'm very high on. I think he fits with Lamar better than Marquise Brown ever did. Much more capable of going over the middle, which is where Lamar likes to throw. He's more accurate there. So I think he's whatever we've seen from Marquise, I'd add like 10% to that. I think that's where he hits this year, and I think he can improve as time goes on. And then the young running back that I'm banking on, hopefully having a big year, is Javonte Williams. I think it just depends on how much the split is with Melvin Gordon. If it's 70-30 or higher, I think he's a top 10 back. If not, I still think he's a strong running back too. And then I hope to God, as a Giants fan, Saquon Barkley comes through for me. I need it. He's in 2 of my lineups, and obviously he did not come cheap. So, yeah.
I'm high on him. I get it. For me, I have Kyle Pitts and Gabe Davis in 2 leagues. My boy Damien Pierce, of course. I got him in 3 leagues. I would have got him in all 4, but apparently me hyping him up for 6 months, he was too expensive for my last draft. And then I do have Darnell Mooney in all 4 leagues, which I always love when you get a guy in every league and you're like, man, this could either be really good or really bad. Real quickly, who do you regret that you didn't get?
Guys I most regret, probably more than anyone, is DJ Moore. In part just because I've always loved DJ Moore. I was high on him coming out. I think I had him in at least 1 league 3 straight years coming into this year. So he's been one of my guys. I think now that he has Baker instead of Sam Darnold, the chances that he finally breaks for more than 4 touchdowns, because he hits like 1,150 yards every season, but then he catches only 4 touchdowns. So I think this is the year he breaks out and he gets us like 7 or 8. But sadly, it will not benefit me. And then Breece Hall, although in part that's just because, again, 2 of these are keeper leagues, and I would love to have Breece Hall in a keeper league. And then Chase Edmonds. I just think the frustrating thing there is he was a guy I was always thinking about. I'd be like, I'll get him in my next pick. And then 2 picks before I'd go, he'd be gone. Or if it was an auction draft, I'd like have just gotten a running back and be like, he's kind of like a luxury that I can't afford right now. So I regret that because I'm really excited to see what he looks like in the
In that
Shanahan
offense, yeah.
scheme. Yeah. Because we both liked him the last couple of years when he got opportunities. And he also can catch, which not, like Elijah Mitchell we love, but he doesn't do a whole lot in the receiving
Hopefully
game.
this year
Edmonds can. So I think Edmonds is a sneaky, at least running back too. I think he could be a high-end running back too if everything breaks right in Miami. So I would have liked to have had him just as like a third or fourth back that could really put my team over the top.
So the two guys for me are Lamar Jackson, who I think he's going to have a monster year.
I did get him in one league, thankfully.
Lamar Jackson, when he's healthy, he's incredible. And then the other guy we were talking about before the pod, Adam Thielen, who 24 touchdowns in his last 28 games, top 14 scoring receiver per game average for the last 5 years. He was like wide receiver 30. And my dumbass did not get him in a draft. So that is on me. So real quickly, before we actually get into our picks, I just want to plug the amazing work at the Fantasy and Frames website right now. Jorge put up a great sit-start article today. You should take it. Probably takes like 5 minutes to read. It's great stuff. It is not too late to read our division-by-division preview. We did in-depth, and that's the whole Fantasy and Frame stats, breakdowns of every division, best plays, sleepers, every position, including defense. Really proud to have been a part of that. And then Wednesday night is officially the Fantasy and Frames podcast network night. The podcasts are back to back to back to back. The IDP show follows us. We've got the Dynasty pod. Be sure to check those out. And if you go to Apple or Spotify, we'd greatly appreciate it if you would rate and review us, but only if you can give us 5 stars. All right. So Week 1, Joe, we love this stuff. I do want to say, though, real quickly, this is the literal definition of a take your shot week, right? Because there's not a lot of data. You can go off last year, obviously, but we all know one NFL season to the next, it's a crapshoot. So this is a week that if you have a gut instinct or you have a feeling or a trend or whatever, I'm not going to judge almost any play this week because nobody really knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
All right. So
that is the exciting thing is this is kind of, if you hit right, whether it's just regular football gambling or DFS, this is the time where you can really cash in.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, once they have the information and they're setting the prices by it, or they're setting the lines by it, then it's a lot harder to beat. It's a lot harder to find the advantages. If your instincts are right, and a lot of it at this point, we do a bunch of research, but it's still kind of instincts because it's guys going to new teams, new situations.
It's a different
season. If your instincts are right, the first month of the season is really the prime opportunity.
All right, so for the QB expensive tier, we went back and forth on this. And by the way, this year we're going to co-sign an expensive tier. If we each give a different guy, we're going to briefly mention the other person, but we're going to just talk about one of them. So we were close to going with your pick, which was Jalen Hurts, but I just basically beat you into submission to where it's Lamar Jackson, 7,300. He's playing the Jets. The Ravens season last night was a mess. They had the most injuries on their roster in modern NFL history, and they still went 8-9, which I think is incredible. I know Lamar had a disappointing, in quotation, if you're going to be listening to this on the podcast, sarcastic quotations, he averaged over 21 points per game, which was 7th in the NFL. They're playing the Jets. I mean, it's a bad defense. Last year, they were dead last to running backs, near dead last to quarterbacks in points per game. And last season, Lamar threw for the most yards per game he has in his career while still being on pace to get near 1,000 yards on the ground. I think the Ravens are going to win the AFC North, contend for the number 1 seed because their schedule is soft. And I think they make a statement here. And I just love what they've done with Lamar as a passer. He's best over the middle, in the seams. And what have they done? They got Rashad Bateman's the number 1 receiver who's very comfortable going in that area, and 2 really talented tight ends now. Mark Andrews is obviously, we know, a stud, but I'm telling you, Isaiah Likely is going to be a problem for teams if you watch the preseason, especially with Lamar Jackson, as much as he likes to hit tight ends.
Oh, yeah, like you said, it was, in some respects, I guess maybe disappointing, mostly just because he got hurt. I mean, going into the game where Lamar went down for the year, he was on pace for the first 4,000, 1,000 season in NFL history. So, and that's not even accounting for the 17th game. He was on pace going into that game to do that in 16 games. So he was doing, historic things with not a lot of help. Obviously, does the amount of offense he accounts for, at least as far as like rushing attempts plus pass attempts, does that go down a little bit this year? Maybe. But I think the efficiency goes significantly up. So, yeah, I think I had him as my second or third QB going into this season. I think he's right there with Herbert behind Josh Allen. So, yeah, as much as, my Jalen Hurts thing is basically like you hope to get the same production for $600 fewer dollars. And I also, I do not believe in the Lions defense at all. So it's a similar vibe, which, again, running QBs are just worth so much.
Especially in this.
The floor and the ceiling go up. There's a reason Josh Allen's number one every year because he does both really well.
And again, we're going to talk a lot about stacking quarterbacks with receivers. Lamar and Hurts, in my opinion, are the two exceptions. They run so much that I'm actually okay just starting them, and you don't necessarily have to put a receiver or tight end with them. All right, who's your mid-tier receiver?
I was going to say,
your median.
QB, but yeah. Actually looking through our list, every single QB that we picked this week, I believe, is a guy who's capable of, maybe not what Lamar does,
right?
But they're all capable runners. And actually, Trey Lance is probably capable of the running aspect of what Lamar and Jalen does. Last year he broke 20 points in 2 of his 3 starts. Again, as a rookie.
And he's 6,000, just so you know.
A rookie coming off of playing 1 game in Division II football the year before because of COVID. So now he's had a whole season where he's gotten accustomed to the NFL. He's had a whole offseason where he's primed to be the starter. So I think, whatever you got last year, which again broke 22 of 3 times, he hit 15 in the other. He only threw 25 passes in one of those games. So they were just really running the ball constantly with him. So now the hope obviously is you're going to see it open up a little bit more. They have a lot of weapons. It doesn't take a lot to get the ball to Debo. It's not like he has to chuck the ball 40 yards downfield. But again, the upside too is Brandon Ayuk might be better now because he's a QB who can throw it 40 yards.
Yeah, yeah. Ayuk's a great downfield.
You've got Kittle.
Maybe Kittle.
And you've got Shanahan calling the plays. Like the sky is the limit. Again, his floor is not that low because we're going to have the rushes. He's going to get us 50 yards on the ground. So, I again, 6,000 to me, worst case, he puts up numbers right around where you'd expect a guy who's worth 6,000. Best case is it's a lot higher. And again, the Chicago defense, maybe a couple of years from now, we're talking about something. I like that Matt Eberflus hires their head coach, came over from Indy, but they have like one good corner, Jalen Johnson. The rest of it, it's pretty barren.
They are pretty good against the run, which is my only concern about Lance this week, is I think that they do have enough talent where they might could slow down the run. But Lance at that price, he's another one of these guys. You're going to hear this a lot today. This could be about the cheapest he gets. if he comes out and does what he's capable of, you may not get him for $6,000 again this year.
Like I would say outside of the other guys in his class, so Lawrence and Fields, those are the only guys below him who I think you could argue have ceilings that are similar. But
maybe not even though with the running, right?
But not and not this week for Fields because he has to play the 49ers defense, which is a lot better than the
He'll be running, but it'll be for his life, not for rushing yards.
Exactly.
My middle tier guy is Trevor Lawrence. You just mentioned 5,600. The Lawrence Redemption Tour starts this week. I'm not the least bit worried about his bad rookie year. The Urban Meyer stuff was a mess. Doug Peterson, the new head coach. Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate when he was head coach. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl and won a duel against Tom Brady. If he got that out of those guys, what can he get out of Trevor Lawrence? I like what they did with their weapons. You got Kirk. I think Jones is going to have a better year. The big deal to me is Etney, who had 85 receptions his last 2 years in college with Lawrence. I think he's going to get peppered with targets to move the chains. I think Jacksonville is going to be sneaky good, and I love Lawrence this week, and I'll give you a guy in a little bit you can stack him with. All right, who's your bargain tier QB?
We
share it, right?
Yeah, I was going to say we share it. It's. I guess it may be our boy since we're 2 of the last semi-believers.
We're the last 2 on the boat.
Is Danny Dimes, my QB, Daniel Jones. I don't know that I'm optimistic he's going to be the Giants starter next season. but I am optimistic at
Oh, me
$5,000
too.
for sure. I mean, again, if I'm remembering right, he opened up last year with a number of 20-point games when the team was semi-healthy before everyone got hurt, because that's what always happens. But I mean, yeah, you just look at him. He's a guy who's capable of running. I mean, if people don't recall the play where he fell against the Eagles a couple years back, he hit, I think it was the fastest speed or second fastest to Lamar Jackson of any QB that season. So he can move. He finally has an offensive play caller that's good. I mean, the last 2 years with
The
Garrett,
clapper.
I mean, that was as bad as it gets. I mean, if you're a Giants fan, you saw the play where like 3 receivers were ending up in the same spot on the route.
O-line's better, right?
Yeah, Evan Neal, I think, makes a big difference. Potentially
Thomas, I
even
think, is
more
gonna
in the
be
run
good.
game. Yeah, Thomas is already good. I don't know what Madden's doing, giving him a 76 overall. But
You'll
yeah,
build him up in your dynasty, Joe. Don't worry about it.
and again, it's week 1, so most of the guys are healthy. Tony is off the injury report as of today, so
I'm
he's
excited
ready to
about
go.
Yep.
I can't say I'm optimistic about Kenny Golladay after what we're hearing, but in camp. But Sterling Shepard is back. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, is a really interesting guy. And again, because they have coaches who can scheme up stuff for a guy like him. And Saquon's healthy. Evan Ingram isn't there to bat the ball to the other team anymore. So, yeah, I think I mean, I had him as a fringe, like, top 20 quarterback, which, that doesn't sound exciting.
He was
But
28th ADP, right?
Yeah, I think he's like right in that like Jameis tier for me, where it's guys who there's a real chance that they could be fringe number ones, like top 15 guys, if things break right. And again, at 5,000, I mean, there's backups. Literally, there are backups who are priced higher.
Let me give you some of the names more expensive than him. Jacoby Brissett, Zach Wilson, who we're not even sure is going to play, Colt McCoy and Jimmy G, who Colt McCoy and Jimmy G are definitely not playing.
I think Colt McCoy went on IR today.
Well, he's still more expensive than Danny Dimes. And just so you know, last year, scored 15 or more 3 of his last 5 games, rushed for 25 yards or more in 6 of the 11 games he started, 30 or more in 3, including the 90-yard. He's going to run a little bit.
And the Titans, let's not forget, Harold Landry is out for the year. That's their best pass rusher.
And they were 24th in QB points allowed last year. So I'm with you. And you didn't have to hold me up at gunpoint to say that. So Danny Dimes, our bargain tier play.
Right. I mean, you can't get a better bargain than 5,000.
No, you can't. Expensive tier running back. You had Alvin Kamara, but me being a Falcons fan, I vetoed that. Even though I do agree he probably will run wild.
He broke 20 both games last year. So
I know he always kills us. I like Joe Mixon because he's $500 cheaper. I don't know why Mixon doesn't get more love. I thought he should have been a top 4 back ADP wise coming into the season. I do. I mean,
the offensive line's a lot better.
So it's a lot better. I think he's going to catch more passes this year, and he caught a lot last year. And I think he's going to score more touchdowns, which he scored a lot. I just think the Bengals are going to be really good. And Mixon is a guy that every year has gotten better. And I love when a player does that. I love to watch a guy improve. And, really the Bengals got to the Super Bowl last year. I think it was an accident. And normally I'm not big on, teams that lose in the Super Bowl the next year. I think the Bengals are the exception. I think they know that they weren't supposed to be there last year and they almost won the thing. And Pittsburgh, not great. Mixon had 2 good games against them last year. And I think that they're going to move the ball enough through the air where Mixon's going to have plenty of room on the ground. And I just think at 7,100, he's a bargain, especially when you look, there's 5-6 running backs more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals really are. I mean, this is the upside to being a team with a QB on his rookie contract is a lot of times if you see a team have kind of that wild run where they just win a bunch of close games, that's it. Like Joe Flacco with the Ravens, he signed his big contract the next year, and he was also Joe Flacco, and so it never happened again. The Bengals just reloaded, got better. They just improved across the board. I think, as far as the team goes, it's going to be harder because Lamar Jackson is back and the Ravens aren't decimated by injuries.
Got an easy schedule.
But as far as just looking at what that offense should do in fantasy, I'm more optimistic about everyone, probably, honestly. Like every guy in that offense compared to last year. And they did pretty damn well last year. So, yeah, I was okay with that. Those were the 2 running backs I was looking at in the over 7,000 range. I mean, obviously, Jonathan Taylor will probably go off against the Texans.
It's too much.
That's not a secret, but yeah, he's taken out 9,100. So
he's by far the most expensive player this week, and that to me that is a dead stay away. When somebody is, I believe he's like $800 more expensive than Javonte Adams.
He's a guy I can see it working out if you're doing a smaller pool.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If it's with your buddies or it's a 20-person pool,
nope,
then sure, just take the 9,100 guy who's going to give you 20 points at least.
Absolutely.
But if you're in a larger one, that's taking up so much money,
and he's going to be high owned.
And he's going to be high owned because again, it's the Texans. He tore them up twice.
People love chalk betting and favorites. Yeah. It's what happens. All right, who's your median tier back? Go ahead and give me your homer pick. I'll give my homer pick in a little bit.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm going to look like a massive homer in this one. I don't even think the Giants are going to be good this year. But
this is pretty cheap though for Barkley.
But yeah, it's Saquon Barkley at 6,100. I think he's a top 10 back, especially in any PPR format, and he's all the way down.
Which luckily DraftKings is right.
I counted it earlier. I forgot to write it down. I think he's the 15th or 16th highest among the Sunday backs. It's not even like counting the Monday night game and stuff. I mean, for me, like you can't look at last year that much. Again, the offense was as bad an offense as I've honestly seen, at least in the last 10 years.
Especially the Jake Fromm starts at the end of the year.
I honestly stopped watching once Daniel Jones
went down. I enjoyed it.
Thank God, because it was painful.
I like to call and give you updates.
He was also coming off the ACL injury from the year before. So I think he's a year healthier. They're saying in camp, granted, grain of salt, anything anyone says in camp, that's good.
Backs do.
They're saying he looks more explosive.
Play better second year.
I'm not saying like expect rookie year Saquon where he was like the second, I think behind McCaffrey, the best fantasy running back in football. But just look at the entirety of his career. Like going through every single game, including the games where he got hurt, he left early, whatever happened. He averages over 100 yards a game from scrimmage over the course of his career. He averages over 4 receptions a game over the course of his career. So that's, to me, that's the baseline, is you're getting 14 points from receptions and total yards, and he gets you a touchdown. Boom, we're at 20. He's only 6,100. Listen, the Tennessee defense is fine against the running backs. I mean, they were second on DraftKings last year. But I kind of like that because I'm not a big believer in this Tennessee team. I think they'll be mediocre kind of across the board. So I like that he's going up against the team that last year was the second best defense.
People maybe stay away.
I think people are going to – I think if they're like the 20th, then people are like, hey, Saquon, 6,100.
Yeah.
But I think this is enough. There's enough question marks about the Giants' offense still. And they're going to see that, and people are going to stay away. And again, Evan Neal, especially at right tackle, I think is a humongous.
He's a monster.
Improvement, especially in the run game. Everything they're saying in camp is there's going to be some rough pass blocking reps, but he is a mammoth human being in the run game. So, yeah, I think there's holes for Saquon. And again, if the Titans do well in this game, and they might, I think the Giants' defense is going to be bad. Saquon's going to catch passes.
Floor goes up.
Giants do well. Saquon's going to run. He's one of those guys. He's in every aspect of the game. They're not going to be putting Matt Breida in a lot. So trust Saquon, and I love him at this price point, 6,100.
I like that. Maybe you talked me into putting him in a lineup. Travis Etienne Jr. is my median tier guy, 5,600. You heard me say it a minute ago, 85 passes the last 2 years in college. I think Etienne is going to be catching passes at a ridiculous rate. I really do. I think that early in the year, that's what he's going to be predominantly as a pass catching back. But don't forget, this dude was a runner. I think people have kind of made him out to, just be a pass catching back. He graded with guys like Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Breece Hall when it comes to athleticism. Dude is a freak. And I think this will be the cheapest you can own him all year, is at 5,600. I really do. I think Jaguars offense is going to be really good. And I just think Lawrence and Etienne are both buzzworthy enough names because they're still young enough. And, you got all the new offense and stuff. And I just think if they have a big week this week, both of those guys are going to creep up immediately. They have a few more. They may never reach that 5,600 and 5,500, which they are this week. So I'm taking advantage of it. My bargain tier play is Damien Pierce, 4,800 versus Indy. If you followed my work during the draft process on Fantasy and Frame or any of the podcasts, I've been on the Fantasy and Frames podcast network since, me and Damien Pierce are like peanut butter and jelly, man. I love the dude. He's Marshawn Lynch Jr. He's physical, but he's got a good burst. He scores touchdowns at an unbelievable rate, and he looked unbelievable in the preseason. Even for me, who was as high as anybody on him. I had him third pre-draft on my running backs in this class, and I've even been shocked by how good he's looked. The Colts were not world beaters stopping the run, and I think Pierce can make me look smart again week 1. And for the people that are questioning, is he a pass catcher? Yes, he's a really good pass catcher. Was he not asked to do that in the preseason? No, he really wasn't. I don't think doesn't mean he's going to do it during the regular season because he can run any route. It was one of the things that every report I saw on him, on his draft grades and stuff, was that this guy is an above average receiver, and he's just such a difference maker. You can see it even in the preseason when he's on the field, and they don't have a lot of those yet. I think he's going to be a big help to Davis Mills, who has a chance to be good. And at 4,800, he's just, to me, too low to pass up.
Yeah, looking through the running backs, he's the floor where I'm looking at them and I'm like, oh, I think this guy could have a good game and I wouldn't be surprised. Because like someone could get hurt and someone goes off, or like Kenneth Gainwell could catch 2 passes that he takes in for touchdowns. And you're like, oh, this is amazing. But really looking through it, like the roles these guys have on their teams, yeah, I think that's the floor right there. You're not going to find a cheaper guy that you feel okay about. But just a little bit higher for my my bargain play.
This is your boy.
It is. I hopped on him early. I bailed on Trey Sermon as fast as anyone not named Kyle Shanahan. So Elijah Mitchell, for those who are Football Outsiders fans, their backcast system said he was better than Trey Sermon. And yeah, it turns out Kyle Shanahan and backcasts.
Those guys are smart.
So yeah, Elijah Mitchell, he's only at 5,400. Again, this is a guy who's the number 1 running back in a team that likes to run the ball a lot. Over 10 points in 10 of 14 games last year. 6 times he broke 15. 49ers, according to Pro Football Focus, their offensive line in the run game has the 4th biggest advantage of any offensive line this weekend against their opposing defensive line. I think they're going to be running the ball a lot because I think they're going to be beating the Chicago Bears, unsurprisingly. I will say, the probably the biggest risk here is, does Trey Lance vulture touchdowns? I think, it's a legitimate worry, but that's also why a guy who was consistently productive is down here at 5,400. So I'm willing to take the risk that he's still going to be very productive. And again, sometimes you lose touchdowns, but then that threat of the running quarterback can make you even more efficient. I mean, again, J.K. Dobbins, when he was healthy his rookie year, was averaging 6 yards a carry next to Lamar Jackson. Look at what Miles Sanders does next to Hurts. He's over 5 yards.
When they give him the ball.
Yeah. So, I think he's going to be hyper productive. And if we get those touchdowns, then we're set at 5,400. I mean, he scores a touchdown, it's going to be a good week at 5,400.
Tyler on the Dynasty show, I thought, made a really good point that with Trey Lance, he thinks he's going to catch more passes because they've kind of opened up that spot for him with the running backs on the roster. He caught passes in college, and if he catches 3-4 passes in this game, he's already worth the 5,400 tag. Moving on to the wide receivers, the expensive tier. You were going to go with T. Higgins. He was too low, in my opinion, to qualify for it. I like the pick, but I said, no, we can't do that. We're going to try to keep it in the top 8 guys. So it's Justin Jefferson, 7,800 versus Green Bay. I know I said I'd stay away from Jonathan Taylor because he's expensive and it'll be high owned. I don't know if Jefferson will be. The Packers have, and I love seeing that. I think it's like the red 10. Anytime there's a red number by the defensive rank, I'm always thinking, well, this means other users are probably going to shy away. And
right, and again, start of the year,
we don't know.
Should be less afraid of that.
Exactly.
If we're in week 15 and it's like this is the 4th best defense against receivers, you should take a beat and decide if you really want to make that plunge. Week 1, who knows?
It's like taking a new test with last year's master. You're not going to do too well. The big thing for me for Jefferson is just they were in a run-first offense, and he put up the numbers he did. He's already said he's going to break 2,000 yards. I love to hear that kind of stuff. He's going to be in the Cooper Kupp role. The guy that moved Cooper Kupp all over the field is now their head coach, going to have a huge impact in their play calling. I think Jefferson is going to have a monster year. I think he's going to be the number one receiver in fantasy football. And again, this is another guy at 7,800. He's only going to go up, people.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a totally reasonable pick. Just to give me my T. Higgins love.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love Higgins and Chase this week and in general, obviously, as we covered earlier. But I think the key thing to remember with Higgins, and it's why I generally kind of favor him in DFS versus Chase, is if we just go by the 14 games that T. Higgins was out there. Chase didn't miss a game. Higgins missed 3. The exact same number of targets.
It's crazy.
The exact same. Higgins had more receptions. Chase had more yards. Obviously, he's kind of more of the deep threat. The real divider, though, is touchdowns. Chase scored 13 touchdowns across the season, 11 in games with T. Higgins. Higgins only had 6. Chase only saw 1 more target in the red zone. So this is all coming on just the big plays. Now, is Chase going to suddenly stop getting big plays? No, I think he's a fantastic receiver. He's going to get some. But I think defenses are more than ever going to be focused on trying to take that away. And that only benefits T. Higgins. Because, again, red zone. Everywhere else except on deep balls, he's equal to Jamar Chase. So if teams are trying to take away that deep ball, he'll be the guy who benefits. And also, he's playing the Steelers this week. He's played 2 games against the Steelers in his career with Joe Burrow. So in 1 game, he didn't have Jamar Chase on the team, obviously. Got 7 passes for 115 yards and a touchdown. The 1 game he played against Pittsburgh last year with Jamar Chase on the team, 6 receptions, 114 yards, 1 touchdown. There's no difference. It's 1 reception and 1 yard.
You're calling 100 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
All right, I like it. There we go. You first book it.
I think you should have one of those guys. And again, I just think when you're looking at the divide in price,
no, I'm with you.
It's Higgins.
I love the stat on I think you brought that out at the end of last year, and I couldn't believe it because you just think Chase is getting peppered with targets. Higgins is a stud too. The median tier, I got Darnell Mooney, 5,700 versus San Francisco. I own him in 4 leagues. I figure why don't throw him in my DFS lineups as well. He was 11th in targets last year and saw almost 27% target share on a team with Allen Robinson, who we know now is with the Rams. I mean, Mooney's probably going to see north of 30%, potentially be top 5 in total targets. I think he's in for a breakout year on a team that's going to be bad, down, throwing a lot, all good for Mooney. And Justin Fields is talented, which no offense to Andy Dalton, he wasn't last year. And there was a difference the last games that Fields and Mooney played together. He last year versus San Francisco, playing only 70% of snaps, he had 6 catches for 60 yards. So he's done work against them. The 49ers have had their issues against pass catchers, especially athletic ones. I think Mooney at 5,700 is by far the best value other than the guy that you have at wide receiver, your median one.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Pittman, listen, I understand why he's down here at 5,500, and it's the danger here is how does the game go? Because last year the Colts blew out the Texans twice. The Texans could not move the ball at all on them. And so Michael Pittman just didn't have that much opportunity. So that's the worry. That's why he's down here at 5,500. Are you going to see a receiver of Michael Pittman's level at this price point, though, the entire rest of the season? Outside, again, there could be a rookie who busts out. That's it. There's going to be no one else who's as good as Michael Pittman was last year who's going to be down here at 5,500. I mean, this is a guy who, he's a top 50. He was a top, I think, 15 or 16 receiver last year. In drafts, he's going there this year. I think the big key for him is going from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan. I think there's going to be a lot more trust with the coaching staff with Matt Ryan in the red zone.
That's what I'm saying. They're going to throw it a lot more. I don't care.
As someone who owns,
they're running it. They're going to throw more.
As a Jonathan Taylor owner in one of my leagues, this is my one worry is that he got an insane amount
touchdown regression
carries last year.
I think so.
And so unless the offense is just way better, which is possible.
That's true.
He's going to see some regression, but I think that only helps Michael Pittman. So again, there's a little bit of risk here. I definitely wouldn't put both of them in my lineup if you do splurge. Don't decide I'm going to splurge for Jonathan Taylor, and
No, I
I'll
would
make
pair
up for
Ryan
that by
with
putting Pittman in there. Don't do that.
If you're gonna do that, if you want to
Yeah,
pair Colts,
that's a
put Ryan
great
with him.
combo because that's a super cheap one that I think could pay
11,000.
off. Especially if you're a Davis Mills believer and you think he can at least hang for like 3 quarters, then yeah.
Davis Mills, Damien Pierce is going to run for 300 yards
All
and
right.
keep it close, Joe. Come on.
I like that. I like the counterintuitive do the Damien Pierce Michael Pittman one in case this game is actually just like a really tight battle. I kind of like that because that's one where if that hits, you're great. I think that's kind of a great strategy.
Don't you think, though, seriously, the Colts just want to prove to people we can throw the ball?
I mean, we'll see if they decide they need to prove it this week. Again, for me, this is just I see Michael Pittman at that value, and he's going in some of my lineups. There's just no way.
I love it. He is. He's my favorite bargain. He may be my favorite price this entire slate, period. My bargain tier, Kadarius Toney. I do want to mention just real quickly, Christian Kirk, 5,100. If you're going to play Lawrence, like I have him in a couple of lineups, I would stack those two guys. It's incredibly cheap. Yeah. You have like $40,000 left over, and you have a quarterback receiver that could go nuts. But Kadarius Toney at 4,100. Man, you want to talk about a potential boom for a bargain, which is exactly what we love having here. This guy scored 43 points in the only 2 games that he played 67% or more of the snaps. I think he's going to play 67% or more of the snaps versus Tennessee. God forbid he doesn't get hurt again. One of those was with Jones out. He averaged 12 points per games in the games. He saw at least 55% of stats. I didn't realize how little he played last year, like even in the 9 games that he played. It looks like it's all systems go. He was taken off the injury report, and it's just very rare to have a guy at 4,100 who had a 29-point game the year before. And if you watch Toney at all last year, I'm not kidding about Tyreek Hill light. Dude's electric with the ball in his hand. Giants are more talented around him. I just think at 4,100, it's too much of a good bargain and a potential boom to pass up. He's going to be in most of my lineups.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good flyer to take regardless. But that's kind of the beauty, though, of the Daniel Jones bargain play is anyone you pair him with will be incredibly cheap. Like you could even do like Wan'Dale Robinson and just be like, hey, he's going to be in all the 3 receiver lineups. They should be in 11 personnel.
Some rushing carries, maybe.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, he's $3,000. So like you could do that pairing. That's $8,000 if you filled 2 spots. And again, I like the Toney one even more because we've seen it. It's happened before. And again, he's off the injury report. Who knows how long that'll last? So let's enjoy Kadarius Toney.
I hope so.
All we can. For my bargain tier guy, I'm going with Marquez Valdes-Scantling at 4,700 versus Arizona. I think this game is going to be a shootout, so I want to get at least one person in from this game. And what I like about this is the weakest spots in the Arizona defense last year, according to Football Outsiders numbers, by pass direction, were deep passes to either sideline. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, highest average depth of target in the NFL last year. And he's playing with Patrick Mahomes. Like that's all I need. Like this is the deep target in the offense with Tyreek Hill gone now. They paid him, so they value Valdes-Scantling. They think he's a good fit. And it's against what the Cardinals, based on last season, what their weak spot was. So, hey, if you want to splurge on Kelce for 6,600, awesome, go for it. If you're a Juju believer, that's cool. But to me, this is an ideal spot for Scantling. So I love because he catches one 60-yard bomb for a touchdown. Everything after that's gravy. We've got our 13 points right there. So
I like it.
I love this one. I also think that's another one. You could look at a guy like Rondale Moore for even cheaper because I think the Cardinals are going to have to pass a lot because they're going to be losing that game.
I do worry about just the Cardinals offense in general, though, because Murray is not great in games without Hopkins. But hopefully maybe this is a year. All right, the tight ends. Expensive tier. I mean, Joe gave me Travis Kelce.
Like I said, it's a shootout.
I'm not going to blame anybody. For Travis Kelce this year. I assume his target share is going to be outrageous without Tyreek Hill. Obviously, Mahomes feels very comfortable with him. But my homer pick came through here. I told him we're going with Kyle Pitts, 5,700 versus New Orleans. I think it's the last game this season, especially with the news that Kittles is injured, that he will not be one of the 3 highest priced tight ends. Could be the cheapest he is all season. I think what was lost in Pitt's rookie year last year was just how much he lined up outside. It was just under 40%, and how much he was double covered, which was just under 30%. He's a much more dangerous guy, like in between the seams, lining up on safeties and corners. I think with the addition of Drake London in this draft, defenses aren't going to be able to double him as much, and he's going to be able to line up more in the hashes. And I just think Pitts is going to be the guy this year. I really do. I think he's that special. If you watched, and I know not very many people did, but the Jets game, the second preseason game, and on the second play from game, he just burnt the Jets starting corner for a 51-yard reception. And I mean, it looked like he was jogging. Dude has got unbelievable talent and size. I mean, he's basically like Calvin Johnson is who he kind of reminds me of, but he just plays tight end. It's big potential, going to have a high target share every game. And the Falcons are going to win this game. They're at home. We're going to upset the Saints. Pitt's going to have a big game. 5,700, expensive tier. Who's your median tier, Joe?
All right, well, you heard it here first. Falcons starting off with a win. I like it.
That's the homer play, I believe.
My medium tier is Dallas Goddard. Now, I think that the worry that people have with Dallas is, AJ Brown's there. Are there going to be enough passes to go around? And my answer to that is, I would much rather have him playing with AJ Brown on the field than with Zach Ertz on the field, which is what he's had to do most of his career. Because you don't trade for AJ Brown unless you're planning to pass the ball more. So I don't think that he's going to see a reduction, because I think his percentage of targets might go down, but I think his overall number of targets is not going to go down. And if you look at the games after Zach Ertz left, you prorate those 10 games out to a full 17-game season, 70 catches for 1,044 yards. There's not a lot of tight ends in the NFL who are potential 1,000-yard guys. And again, he doesn't need that many targets. Top tight end in yards per route run. He's just hyper productive. If he was in a different offense, I think he could be up there with the Kyle Pittses of the world.
Gardner Minshew is starting, as we saw last year.
So, yeah, I mean, I just think as long as you believe Hurts is going to grow as a passer, and I think he will. I think this is a good offensive coaching staff. And, again, I think they're clearly inclined to pass the ball more. They know they need to be among the elite teams. So, yeah, I think that's going to happen here. I will say, you worried maybe this game gets out of hand against the Lions? I'm moderately optimistic about the Lions on offense. I think the Eagles' defense is good, so that'll be tough. But Lions have a good offensive line as long as Jared Goff can look a little bit more like a Rams Jared Goff, just a little bit.
They're going to be.
I think they can hang around. And again, it's in Detroit, so I think that benefits everyone. You're playing inside of a dome. That helps the passing. You're also hoping Detroit hangs around a little longer. But, yeah, I just think this is one of the best tight ends in the NFL. He's down here at 4,500. I think there's a good chance he spends most of this year in the 5,000 range. So I'm going to get him while I can.
All right, so I've got Baby Gronk in my median tier. Pat Freiermuth, 4,200 at Cincy. He is loved by this podcast. We've been picking him for, since week 6 of last year. I don't understand it. DraftKings does not bump up his price. Last year, he scored double digits 8 times and scored 7 touchdowns. He never saw more than 80% of snaps in a game. I think that number is going to go up this year. That's going to make him more valuable. He's going to put up bigger numbers, and they're going to need him because Trubisky or Pickett is going to need a security blanket. That's going to be Freiermuth. And Pittsburgh's offense could be frisky. I mean, if they get in the red zone, he was very deadly last year. The Bengals were terrible against the tight ends last year. Freiermuth, in only 35% of snaps, scored 11 points against the Bengals in week 3. He scored 15 against them in week 12. I think he is a very good play at 4,200, so much so, and I like so many tight ends this week, I wouldn't be afraid to do a tight end flex pair with Pitts Freiermuth, Goddard Freiermuth. I think sometimes stacking the tight ends is a sneaky way to get 2 really good cheap players. Bargain tier, Hayden Hurst, and this is just completely about a situation. This is no offense to CJ Uzomah. I just think it's hard to argue that Hurst is not the more talented pass-catching tight end. CJ saw last year a 12% target share in this offense, put up almost 500 yards, 5 scores. He saw 63 targets. Hurts last year put up half the yardage and more than half of the touchdowns with only 31 targets. In 2020, in a similar role than probably what he'll have this year, Hurst put up over 500 yards. He had 6 touchdowns. He's never played with a quarterback like Burrow, as much as I love Matt Ryan. And what I think Burrow is going to really love about him is 182 career targets for Hurst, 6 drops. You throw the ball to the dude, he's going to catch it if it's catchable. I just think there's potential for him to have a real breakout year. And we saw last year that Burrow does like to throw to tight ends. And we know they're not going to get a lot of attention because there's so many other weapons on the field. I think at 3,300, he's a good bargain play. Joe's, who's yours?
Mine is Irv Smith down here at 3,400. And I just think the talent level and the offense he's in, I think you're going to struggle to find similar guys in this range. And this guy who at Alabama was playing on the most loaded receiving core, I mean, maybe in history. I mean, that team was Jerry Jeudy. Why am I blanking? Devonta
You can pick
Smith.
basically any Alabama team for the last 12 years, Joe, and say that.
All those guys were on there, and he was their equal. He put up almost 800 yards receiving. You know, he was right. I think it was Jeudy who was like leading the pack, and then there was like 3 receivers.
Had Calvin Ridley, Devonta Smith.
Plus Irv Smith. Irv Smith was right there with all those other guys in that offense. He's an absolute beast of a human being. 4.6 40. At the end of 2021, or the 2020 season, which went into 2021 in January, he had 2 games where in his last 4 games, prorate that out, he would have had 780 yards and 13 touchdowns. Now, it's a 4-game sample size. It's a small sample size. But even when he was the backup earlier in that season, he had a multiple touchdown game. He's a guy you look for in the red zone. You design plays for in the red zone. Now he's got an offensive coach who wants to pass the ball. Like, listen, Justin Jefferson's awesome. I think he's going to be the number 1 receiver this year. Like, put him in your lineup. But if you want to just try to go a little bit cheaper and still have someone from that Vikings passing offense, like it's really, the Vikings are tiered. We've got Jefferson at the top, Thielen's a good value in the middle, and Irv Smith's the low guy.
True.
At least 1, if not 2 of these guys should go off in this game because they're going to need to score points to keep up with Green Bay. So down there at 3,400, I also give you the caveat that every single tight end that I picked this week is on one of my fantasy teams. I believe in these guys.
Double dipping. I love it, Joe.
So, yeah, I think he's kind of my sleeper tight end of all sleeper tight ends this year. So I won't be surprised if he goes up 1,000 by the end of this season, if he reaches his full potential.
All right, for flex, you'll do expensive, I'll do median, and then we'll both do a bargain. Who you got for expensive?
For expensive, I've got Naji Harris. Again, this is a running back who is not coming off the field at all. The worry, obviously, we've hyped up a lot of Bengals in this pod. So you go, well, what happens if Pittsburgh ends up way down? Well, Najee doesn't go anywhere. Against Cincinnati last year, he had a 14 reception, 102-yard game. So 102 yards is all receiving. So he even got you the receiving bonus against the Bengals. Now, does not having Ben Roethlisberger there hurt that a little bit? Maybe. It's possible. But I don't think he's not disappearing.
It can't hurt the offense.
That's true. Yeah, it might hurt you. He might have 2 less receptions, but it might actually get to score touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, again, he's another guy. It's a lot like Saquon. He's not coming off the field. This guy is a potential top 5 back in fantasy. He's all the way down here at 6,400. Again, that's 1,200 less than a Kamara. That's still, 800, 700 less than Mixon. So I just think you've got a guy who's not coming off the field. And an offense that I am more optimistic on precisely because Ben Roethlisberger is gone. Yeah, I like the value here, even in a matchup where they could be down most of the game.
All right, so median tier, Adam Thielen, 5,400 versus Green Bay. I think the Vikings offense is going to be really good this year. We both talked about it. We've kind of hammered that home. If you haven't noticed, me and Joe are in on the Vikings offense. And everyone is rightfully high on Justin Jefferson. I am too. But Thielen is just, I don't know what's going on. As I mentioned, 24 touchdowns in 28 games. He's now in a pass-heavy offense. He's been 14th or better in points per game at receiver for 3 of his last 4 years. He's priced below Robert Woods, Alan Lazard, and Hunter Renfrow, who, again, no offense to those guys, but what have any of them, other than Renfrow, for like a 6-game stretch, done that Thielen has done the last 4 years? And now Thielen is probably the number 2 pass option, we're sure, in an offense that's going to sling it. And Kirk Cousins, people like to make fun of him. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback, but he's a very good one who can put up numbers. I mean, look what he did in Washington. I think he's going to have a monster year. He's much lower than what his normally week price tag will be. I'm going to try to get Thielen in my lineups until they get him over 6,000, and then I maybe consider it. But a number 2 receiver who catches that many touchdowns, 24 in his last 28 games against a Green Bay secondary that, by the way, scored a touchdown in the only game, played against them last year. I love Thielen, median tier. Joe, who's your bargain?
My bargain is Jahan Dotson of the Commanders.
Are you sucking up to Jorge?
This one's simple. He costs nothing, and he's the number 2 receiver in an offense against a bad defense. Like, that's all I need. 3,400. This guy's going to be out there almost every play against Jacksonville, who, again, we think can score points.
Yes.
So I don't think this I mean, if we're wrong and they don't score points, then this is the Antonio Gibson game. But if we're right, then yeah, Dotson at 3,400 is, to me, like an insane value. Like receiver, I'm having trouble. There's so many guys who are like in that 34 to 4,700 range where I'm like, which one of them is going to hit? Because I know, like, we've named like 5 guys, and I would bet on like 2 of them being guys who go off at least. So yeah, I just think you're getting a starting guy, a talented first round guy with that opportunity against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I feel pretty good.
All right, real quickly before we get into the defenses, I just do want to mention Mike Davis, who he was trash for the Falcons last year. But there's a good chance if Dobbins is out, he's going to be the starter in a Baltimore run-heavy offense against a bad team in the Jets. 4,400. I don't see any way he doesn't get 10 points. He'll get 10 points probably in receptions because Mike Davis does catch passes. So if Dobbins is out, I would not just forget about Mike Davis at 4,400. All right, the defenses, real quickly. We're going to give an expensive, median, and low. Me and Joe do not value defenses in daily fantasy. We give an expensive tier because that's what we do on this podcast, but we personally don't think it's worth it. Like, unless you are 1,000% sure that like the top 5 or 6 highest priced defenses are going to shut the team out and have sacks and turnovers, because it's so random. I mean, it is so random. And I like to try to find a lower price defense that could go off. Usually try to find a bad O-line, a bad quarterback, whatever the theme you're looking for, and spend that money on your offense, because they're going to consistently it's a huge difference to have $1,000 extra for a wide receiver or running back. It is not a huge difference to have $1,000 for your defense. Okay, real quickly, expensive tier. I got the Ravens versus the Jets. Jets suck. Wilson isn't playing. 4,000 expensive pick. Who's yours?
My expensive is the Indianapolis Colts against, again, the hapless Houston Texans.
You're going to be really sorry when Damien Pierce runs for 300 yards, Joe.
I mean, I will be if that happens. Again, I would just keep in mind Houston scored a total of 3 points in their 2 games against the Colts last year.
That's so sad.
In DFS and on DraftKings,
I thought the Falcons and Giants
Colts scored 18 and 15 those 2 weeks.
Oh,
it's hard to do much better than that.
Oh,
so I don't think it probably won't be that bad, but I mean, that's very recent history against pretty much the same team outside of Damien Pierce.
I was going to say.
He's the ray of hope because the rest of that team did not get better.
All right, median tier. I got the Chiefs versus Arizona 3. I think the Chiefs defense is going to be really good. I don't think enough people talk about it. It's why I think they are a legit Super Bowl contender. I think the offense is not going to be quite as good, but I think they're going to be more efficient. And I think this defense is really good. And I'm telling you, you look at Kyler Murray splits without DeAndre Hopkins, it's a lot of what you saw versus the Rams last year in the playoffs. He's not good. I know he is normally in early season, but not having Hopkins really worries me. I think the Chiefs could be a steal. Who's yours?
My middle is the Eagles against the Lions. You said it to me before we started today. The Eagles defense was pretty good last year, and then they added the two best defensive players for maybe the greatest college defense.
The greatest. Go Dogs.
So as a Giants fan, I hate that. As someone who can now use the Eagles defense in fantasy football, I like it. So to me, again, I think the Lions have a little optimism on their offense overall, but I do not love that starting out against the Eagles week 1. I think that could be pretty rough for them.
All right, the bargain we both agree on, so that means that needs to be in everybody's lineup. It's the Dolphins 2,800 versus 2,600.
2,600, yeah.
Versus New England. New England has been a mess in the preseason. I normally don't look at that, but I told a lot of people, Patriots had an easy schedule last year. Mac Jones was built up as this great quarterback, which he still may be, but he's not the kind of quarterback that in second year is going to carry an offense. And he looks like he needs to do that. The defense ain't going to be good. If they get behind and are throwing, which I think could happen, it could get ugly. I love the Dolphins at 2,600. Dolphins also have a very talented defense. They have talented players at every level.
Yeah. No, I mean, and again, Flores is gone, but they kept the same defensive coordinator. It's going to be a very similar system. And I'm going to fade the Patriots offense until they prove me wrong, which they might. Bill Belichick is a great coach. Maybe this whole plan is going to work out. But, again, I just saw what a Joe Judge team's offense looked like. And I've also seen what Matt Patricia teams look like. And I don't feel optimistic. So, I'm going to take the Dolphins and prove me wrong, Patriots.
All right, we're going to finish the podcast this year with each giving a lineup for DK. Joe, you got 1 minute. Give me your lineup.
All right. And I'm not sure exactly how optimistic I am. I'll probably tweak this because I've got $300 left over in the end. But as of right now, I'm going deep. I'm going for I'm trying to win money in the big pools here. This is not the lineup I would put in with your buddies. That's 15 guys. Daniel Jones at QB for 5,000. Again, we're super cheap there. Running back. Yeah, let's fade it. Let's see if the Texans can hang around in this game. Give me Damien Pierce for the 4,800.
That's my boy.
That then allows me to go with, I'm even going to go. Yeah, I'll go with my pick. Give me Kamara, 7,600 against Atlanta. Again, I think your offense could be interesting. The only part of your defense that's good is the corners. They don't cover Alvin Kamara.
Grady Jarrett took offense to that.
All right, I apologize. It's Grady Jarrett and 2 corners. Kadarius Toney is obviously we're mixing him in with Daniel Jones at 4,100. I like Christian Kirk at 5,100. Washington, their slot corner, it's like Jude Baptiste. It's one of those hyphen names. He was awful last year. I don't expect him to be much better. And again, Christian Kirk, I think then benefits because he might be the number 1 option in this offense anyway. So I like him in that game. T. Higgins, like I said, we're all in on T, 6,100. So I went pretty cheap through there, and the Dolphins D I'm locking that in most lineups. So I splurged at tight end. Give me Travis Kelce and give me Justin Jefferson at my flex. I think Kansas City, Arizona, and Green Bay, Minnesota could be the 2 highest scoring games this week. And I think those are the 2 best players in those games. So that's where I'm spending my money.
That's a good lineup. Mine's better. I went with Lamar Jackson at quarterback versus the Jets. My running backs are Etney and Gibson. I hate what happened to Robinson Jr., but Gibson is going to have a huge game week 1. Don't forget how many receptions he catches. Because I'm going with Toney. It's one of my receivers at 4,100. I can put Pittman at 5,500, Jefferson at 7,800. We are sharing a lot of the same players. I did the double tight end stack that I talked about. Hawkinson, 4,900 versus the Eagles, who were 32nd against tight ends last year.
I will say they added, was it Kazir White?
I don't care. Hawkinson's a beast, man.
Might be able to cover a little bit better.
I don't think so. Cal Pitts, 5,700 is my flex, and the Chiefs are my defense. Like Joe said, there's a good chance that lineup may be changed. No, I'm kidding. We will keep that lineup, but we really appreciate you guys.
The official lineup, so hopefully it goes well.
This has been week 1 of the Daily Fix podcast. We will be back next week with plays for week 2. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon. Peace.